Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network for an exclusive iTalk Movies interview with Jorge Valdes-Iga. Today we're talking about his amazing movie, I Was There. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk, we talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's iTalk Movies.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have Jorge Valdes-Iga in studio with me, writer-director. Just watched his movie, I Was There. It was amazing. We're talking all about it today, as well as his career as a whole. If you guys are interested in following the Popcorn Talk Network on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, you can find it at the Popcorn Talk Network. If you like what you see today, please rate, like, and subscribe on YouTube, on iTunes, all that stuff. And if you guys are interested, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm Jeff Graham. You can follow me at Jeffrey C. Graham. Jorge, where can the people follow you and find you?
You can find me in Instagram, Jorge Valdes-Iga. That's my name, Jorge Valdes-Iga with an S, I-G-A.
Great. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here today. I watched the movie yesterday, and I really, really enjoyed it. I was very impressed. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, and it was cool. One of the things I want to talk about with you today was this was a 9/11 movie that was very different from most 9/11 movies that we've seen. If you want to talk a little bit, just in general, what were some of your inspirations for this movie? How did this project come about?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure. And so the film came about in a very interesting way. I was involved in another project, and that project got canceled. Not canceled, pushed back. But for all intent and purposes, for me, that's going away. And in that summer in New York City, I was in acting classes, just to become. I like to take acting classes from time to time to become a better director of actors. And I was at the Susan Batson studio in New York City. Susan Batson is an amazing acting coach. She is the coach to Juliette Binoche, Nicole Kidman, and big celebrity A-talent actors. And in there, I met James Lee, who is the main character, who plays Gus, the main character in I Was There. And he called me one day. It was a Friday, and he called me and told me, "Hey, listen, I want to pitch you a story. Can you come over to my place?" I got there like around 6 p.m. and he starts pitching me this idea that he was developing and this character that he was doing a one-act play about, and I basically stayed with him until 4 a.m. because I was so engaged, and I was like, well, it could be like this and this and this, and we could make it into the movie. And then again on Saturday I came back, and again on Sunday I came back. And we didn't sleep for the whole weekend. And by Monday we had a complete outline of what the film would be like.
That's always the sign of a great project, is when you can't stop talking about it. So I feel like you must have known right then and there this is going to happen. For those who have seen the movie, or those who haven't, what it is it's a 9/11 movie about a survivor, a firefighter who actually abandons his post trying to rescue survivors out of fear and panic. In doing so, he becomes a victim and becomes trapped by the rubble and is rescued and is made a hero by the press, but kind of struggles with survivor's guilt and remorse, knowing that he was kind of a coward for wanting to abandon his post. And owing to I don't want to give too much away, but owing to a catalyst where someone's trying to out him as someone who didn't stick around to help the victims, he's kind of forced to go on an introspective personal journey to learn more about himself. So let's talk about James Lee's performance as Gus. What a performance. I was really, really amazed by what he brought. So this was originally a character that he had kind of developed, you were saying. Mm-hmm. How do you feel like I guess as a director, how do you balance, knowing that the actor had kind of created this character, but wanting to bring your take to it and balance his take to it? How did you kind of handle that and manage that on set?
Mm-hmm. With James, it was very interesting because he has a tremendous amount of experience, first of all. And so he becomes a character. So in a way, like, I really didn't, other than like walk here, walk there, and a couple of adjustments here and there on performance, I really didn't say much to him. Like, he was already the character when he was like already had the beard. He had been like working on all the stuff and all the fear and everything. So he had all the layers operating. I literally just would call him like, "We're ready for you," and like get on the close up. And I can only remember like a few instances where I was like, maybe try this or try that. He was already in. as a fun fact, like, had never seen him act before. Neither him or Sebastián Zurita, who plays the son in the movie, or Karl Ford, who plays the antagonist in the movie.
Samuel, was that?
Samuel, yeah.
That was a great performance too. I'm excited to talk about all that, but I interrupted you. Keep going.
No, it's okay. Basically, neither of the three people I saw act before, which was kind of terrifying, but at the same time, I kind of like just went with the instinct that I just knew that, especially James was the character. Like he was already in. Like when he pitched me the story, I fell in love with him as a firefighter. There was no question in my mind that, oh, we should look for somebody else or anything like that. It was like he is the guy. Like he was already in the character.
Yeah.
And the rest of the Karl Ford, for instance, is Susan Batson's son. He's an amazing acting coach, and I had seen him coach. And from seeing him coach, I just knew that he would be good as well. Like I just knew that he would be, because in the movie he has to kind of coach Gus.
Interesting.
Also into coming out of that, right? So it just fitted really perfect. And Sebastian's involvement in the film was interesting. He came on as a producer and an actor. He found out that I was doing this film. He was actually involved. We were doing this other film that got canceled in the beginning, and then he found out that I was doing this film. Originally, I wanted to do it with very super indie. I mean, it's still very indie, but I was gonna do it with like no budget, like nothing, and just like my little camera, because I wanted to shoot something that summer. And he's like, send me the script, and he fell in love with the character that I wrote for the son. And he felt so passionate about it. He's like, I want to do this film, and I want to come in. He has his own production company in Mexico. He's like, so he got involved. He got the production company involved.
Wow.
And so the budget suddenly became a micro but realistic budget for a film.
Yeah, I mean, the film looks great. That's one of the things I want to talk about. Is it's a really well shot film. I got the impression you guys shot on location in New York. Was that right? So how did that all work? Because I know obviously this is a production. It's not some guerrilla film with DSLR cameras. This is a production. Did you guys have to get permits to shoot, all the scenes that you did? And what were some of the creative decisions that you made to shoot, like the stairwell, for example? How did you manage to make the film look so good on a micro budget?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a challenge. Our production manager Brian Stream was an incredible asset on the movie. Like he caught all the locations. He jumped on board. Something to say is also like when I first met James and we talked about the movie, that was in June, and we shot the film in August.
Wow!
So we wrote the script over the weekend. We had a step outline. Over the next 2 weeks, we developed the screenplay. I actually had to fly out to shoot some commercials, so we found a writer to help us flesh it out, Sinead Daly, and she was wonderful, and she helped us put it together, just flesh it out. And then we came in and did a new rewrite on it, and 2 months later, or a month and a half, kind of, we were shooting it.
Wow!
So it was really fast paced, and we put it all together. Another friend of mine found out as well that I was shooting a film, and he asked me the same thing as Sebastian. Hey, I heard you're shooting a movie, and I was like, yeah. I'm like, well, why don't you call me? I was living in New York at the time, and he was living in Los Angeles. I was like, well, you live in Los Angeles, and but he's my cinematographer that I always use for commercials, and he's shot all my short films. We went to college together. His name is Philip Friesenmichler. The reason the film looks so good is because of his eye and his talent. And he told me, listen, just send me the script. And he got so hooked, and he's like, listen, I'll come to LA. I'll bring my red camera. I'll bring my assistant. I'll pay for everything for both of us. Pay me later if a movie ever makes money. Pay me later. I don't care.
Wow.
And so it started to become this thing where people just started to jump in. A friend of ours from Mexico, Ricardo Gaspar de Alba, our first AD, also the same things. I'll come, everybody started to come together, and it was this snowball effect of and it all started when that meeting with James and I, where we were so passionate about it, and we did a little video, kind of like a Kickstarter, but internal, because we were using movie references to just show people that were coming into the movie what it was, and people were just loving it, and we got a lot of support behind us because of that.
So what would you say were some of the inspirations from the film? It's not uncommon to kind of cut together a concept trailer, essentially. It sounds like. What do you feel like were some of the, previous movies, whatever, that you drew from to kind of inspire the tone and the feel of this movie?
Mm-hmm. Well, James was in love, is in love with opera, kind of looking and exploring fear. Like as an actor, as an artist, he loves to like sit on it, or at least at that time he was really into that. We both like raw films, very visceral films. One of the films that came up when we were talking about it was A Bad Lieutenant, the original one. Something that felt very raw. It's much grittier and much darker. But yeah, when we looked at other 9/11 films, I looked briefly at them. I didn't want to look at them too much because I didn't want to get too sidetracked with that. But nobody like treated the subject like this. You know, like everything is like the heroes to this, and there was very little being said about people who suffered from post-traumatic stress, from survival's guilt, and we wanted to touch on that, on how does a person that survives but wanted to die, or like, you know, all that survival's guilt, to me was very interesting.
Definitely. Yeah, it was a very fresh take. I think since 9/11 obviously becomes a staple of a lot of art, books, TV, movies, and you can run the risk of almost using the tragedy maybe in an exploitive way. But what I loved about this movie is you did not. Instead, you focused on the experience of a single person. But in a greater way, that kind of became a universal experience for New Yorkers in general. And I don't know, I think there was I've never lived in New York, but watching the movie, I thought like, man, this movie's really seeming to capture not only one person's experience, but kind of the external experience of New Yorkers as a whole. So I really liked that part of it. Going back to just production questions, how long was the shoot?
The shoot was like 18 days and a half, so let's say 19.
Okay.
And we actually shot during 9/11. So there's a lot of scenes, or like a couple of scenes during 9/11 on the street that is full of like just real people walking around. So we really captured the essence of the day, and by him we just had again no direction, right? Like just James, get off we'll follow you around, and we just followed him around the streets, and he, you know, there were camera crews. There was a camera crew from CNN that like was shooting him because they actually thought that he was a firefighter.
Oh wow!
That he was so in, and everybody around thought that he was a firefighter. Even firefighters thought that he went to. I remember like we went to like a place where all the fire trucks were parked, and all the firefighters on 9/11, they, you know, you see the Irish people like in the Irish bars having beers, you know. I was talking to them, I was like shooting, and he was like walking around like just getting on the fire trucks. Nobody said anything because he just assumed that he was he was so like in the character that nobody questioned that he was meant to be there, like touching the equipment and everything like that, you know.
Good actor, I guess.
Yeah.
So that would have been 9/11 2012, right? Was that when?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Yeah, there was such a sense of truth. Was it the montage near the end of the movie where he's kind of reliving his experiences? And yeah, I wondered if there was some kind of, it had such a naturalistic, almost documentarian feel during that montage. I wondered if you were actually shooting on 9/11, so that's cool to learn. So I want to talk a bit about these performances. Obviously, we've talked about James Lee's performance as Gus, the protagonist. You talked a bit about Karl Ford's performance. I was compelled by his ability to kind of, you know, play the antagonist, but still generate sympathy and compel the audience. What do you think it was about his performance, or how did you direct him to, you know, kind of balance the good and the evil of his motivations?
Mm-hmm. I think, you know, again, it's funny because this is like, I became like the director I didn't direct in this movie kind of thing, because when you get like, it is true that when they say that 90% of acting is casting, he was just the perfect person to play the role. Like, we had one phone call when I offered him the role, where he asked me like, why are you offering me the role? Very much, like, this is like really close to me, and all this 9/11. He was like really involved in 9/11 and everything like this. He's an actor. He's a director. He basically doesn't really act. I mean, he acts, but only like if you like talk to him and like, please act in my movie.
Yeah.
He's more of a director and writer. He's an artist and pretty much a philosopher, really. Like, he's very brainy. He's a great acting coach as well. He does a lot of acting coaching. He coaches a lot of actors. So it just felt that he would just do the work and get it right, and he did. Like, he shows up with his massive monologue that he has to do in this scene, and he had already broken it. There was very little direction that I had. There was one moment that I was like, I want you to do this and cough. He's like, I don't want to do it. And I'm like, okay, do it your way and just give me one. But there was one time that we had a disagreement.
That you were actually
we just do it twice and that's it.
It's kind of a dream job as a director. Just, let the actors create the space, create the environment, and just, they say the best leader is the one who finds great people and assembles a good team and lets them all do their job. And it sounds like this was a position kind of that you fulfilled in this movie, huh?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a dream when you get it like that.
Yeah.
For sure.
The last performance that I was pretty astounded by was Gus's mom, who was played by CC Loveheart. Did you intentionally write her to have no dialogue? And if so, why?
Yes, we intentionally wrote her with no dialogue. That was in the original story by James.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why is because we both felt that he needed to confess, and I think that everybody in the movie is jammed and this is something that has happened, I see with us as human beings in regular, like, if we don't come to terms with ourselves and we look at ourselves in the mirror hard, we're never going to progress. And so it's like we are at a standstill for as long as we want, until we are ready to face ourselves and ask the hard questions and say the true things to move on. So when he does confess to the mother has a reaction, finally.
Yeah.
She doesn't speak, but she has a little bit of a reaction. I don't want to give everything away, but yeah.
There definitely was a sense of opening. Even that's why I think the performance was so astounding to me, was because she managed to communicate so much with so little. I don't know if you've seen Stranger Things on Netflix yet.
No.
It's a new miniseries, but there's another performance with very few words, and I was reminded of that. I guess anyone watching Into You as well, I would definitely recommend that miniseries.
Okay, cool.
There's a performance by a very young actress, which was similar in execution, in that there wasn't many words, but there was so much to communicate. So in terms of directing, what were your objectives in terms of like pacing and cinematography? Like, what were some of your goals to, just as the director, in terms of how the movie would be paced and how it would look?
Mm-hmm. In terms of pacing, I knew that the film had a little. Had a lot of dialogue. We knew that we had a low budget film in our hands, so it's not like we can shoot for 3 months or you know what I mean. So you tell the story as concisely as possible with as much. You get the story right. Let the actors play. I mean, a lot of the scenes were not improvised, but like we knew what we wanted and we had a script and everything like that. But they just played. A lot of them were just playing. A lot of it then later was cut in editing. But when we were there, we were playing. Like, there's many scenes. Like even the scene with the mom, it was scripted, but James really we tell me when you're ready, Jorge, and he would come down and like just go, because it's such an emotional scene too. And by the way, CC Loveheart and James, when they did the scene together, it was so profound that everybody had to step out and cry.
Yeah.
It was so, and they did it a few times, and every time was like, I'm so happy that the film is out now, that it's coming out in festivals and everything like this, because it's just showcasing the amazing talent of these people. That it's really, really incredible.
It really was kind of an actor's film. I mean, like, it was really 4 or 5 central characters, and kind of a dream project as an actor, I would think, for all of them, because each of them had a pretty profound arc. So credit to you and credit to the writing and credit to the cast for, you talk about emotion. It really was, to me, a movie all about performances. So props to bringing out great performances in your cast.
Thank you.
Another question I have about your direction is, this movie was very personal. I feel like a lot of the growth and kind of dynamic elements of the characters that we saw were very internal. So how, as a director, do you communicate that?
The internal struggles?
The internal struggles and the internal growth, both, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, for instance, like, how to communicate? Well, we knew that, for instance, Gus's arc, we knew that he was in shutdown and full of anger and full of pain. And so he has to come to terms with what he hates about himself, right, to be able to become the person that he truly needs to be, like what he was before. So we have this. I say it's the 5 C's. I mean, that's I learned from Susan Batson. Like, so it's circumstance, conflict, point of crisis, climax, and conclusion. So that's like the main arc. So for each of the characters, when we were writing them, we kind of had that in mind. And when we talked about it with each actor before, like I like to when I come to set, it's really there's not that much directing that I have to do other than reminding them about what we talked about. Or remember that is this. Remember that he's coming from here. Or remember that here is where you need to do this or whatever. Or in some cases, like try that was great, but in this next take, try this or not. Don't cry. You cried the last one. That was great. The next one, just try to hold it back. This is the stuff that I would say on set. As far as the arc, in the internal arc, I think that, you know, maybe I'm just very lucky, but every actor that I've worked with has understood this type of arc, you know. So it's kind of like a collaboration when they bring and they say, well, and sometimes like I bring this and they bring something better. Most of the times they bring something way better, you know, like when we talk. And then they bring, oh, this relates because of this or this or this. And when you hear them talk and you're like, okay, they got it.
Yeah.
You know, there's really not much that I have to explain. The more, if I find myself talking too much, which I do, and it's a problem. But if I find myself talking too much, it's because something is not clear. But suddenly the nickel drops and yeah.
Great. Well, I really, really enjoyed the film. For any of you who haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it. As of right now, where might people be able to catch this movie?
So it was premiered in Italy a few weeks ago in the Fuji Film Festival, a really beautiful film festival 30 minutes away from Rome. And then it was premiered in Rhode Island, in Rhode Island International Film Festival, which was like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I'm in a blur now.
Oh, but, I'm sure, yeah, press tour.
Yeah, and now it's gonna screen in the Downtown LA Film Festival.
Great.
We don't know the dates yet. But it's been announced and everything. That is so it's hopefully will come out in the next few weeks. What day it will be screening.
Okay, great. Well, stay tuned. Maybe on your Twitter, Instagram, you'll tweet the date. Highly recommend, especially anyone in LA. This was a very, very great movie and a really fresh take on the 9/11 narrative. So congratulations on the movie. So now I want to talk about your career as a whole and just a bit about your experience as a director, both before this movie and then hopefully after this movie as well. So I was reading you were born in Cuba, but I was asking you before the interview, would you consider yourself Cuban? And it sounds like not necessarily. Can you talk a bit about your upbringing for me?
Sure. I was born in, my father's a diplomat, a Mexican diplomat. Well, he just retired recently. And because of his job, me and my brother were born in Cuba. And so we lived there for like 4 years. Well, I lived there I was born. I lived there until I was 4, and so you know it's funny because then we moved to Mexico, and so in Mexico everybody considered me Cuban, and then from Mexico to Argentina, when we moved to Argentina, everybody thought that I was Mexican, and from Argentina when we moved to Spain, then everybody thought I was Argentinian, because I had like a massive identity crisis at some point. Because I was always adopting every accent that I was moving into to blend in, to the point that I was like, okay, who am I? Am I where from here, from there? So to the point that I was like, you know, I don't have to be from anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm a citizen of the world, and the world is, we all belong to this world, and there's no need for, you know.
Absolutely.
But one interesting thing about I was there is that on the day that one of the last days of the film, of the shoot, we shot the opening of the scene, which is when Gus is found buried in the rubble.
I'm sure you had to time your shoot because of his hair and his facial hair. And
correct.
You had to be strategic about when and where you're making certain cuts, I bet. So,
correct. Yeah. So we all that had to be planned. So that was at the end of the shoot. And so when they went to set that up, which was like in a stairwell of the studio that we were shooting at, which just make it look as much close as possible to the Twin Towers. That was the day that I pledged allegiance to the flag, to the United States of America.
Wow.
So it was the film itself was like it was very interesting to me because it was like my coming into the American, citizenship kind of thing. It had an element to that. Wow. So I went from pledging allegiance to say action on this scene. It was very emotional for me.
Yeah, I would think so. Very cool. So when would you say your passion for film kind of began?
I never wanted to be a filmmaker when I was growing up. I didn't even think about film. I was very good at painting and drawing when I was growing up. My father taught me a lot. He has a gift for drawing, and he taught me perspective and all those things. So I was always like the kid who was good at drawing, in every country that was it, in every school that I was in. And when I was, then my idea was to be a painter. Like, I'm going to be a painter. But my parents were like, you're going to starve. So they wanted me to study architecture or something else, right? So I studied architecture and I was good at it. But just the idea of like, something was not clicking. And I was good. It was very fun, but something was missing. So I went to study communication. And then that's when I got a photographic camera. And that's when I was like, oh, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah.
So then from that, my parents were moved to Miami instead of, we were in Costa Rica, and the idea was that they were going to move to Mexico. So I moved there first to study communication, but instead they moved them to Miami. And there they offered me a scholarship. I wanted to be with my parents. I had a year alone, and I was like, oh no, I want to be with my parents.
Yeah.
I got really homesick.
Yeah.
And so I got a University of Miami offered me a scholarship. And I applied for the motion picture program because I thought it'd just be cool to be to apply for film. Like, I don't need to do film, but
right.
Just to study film, it would be cool. And then I realized that I was actually good at it. And people that were in the class with me that all their lives wanted to be filmmakers or whatever, like I was just as good as them. So I was like, oh, maybe I'm good at it. And I wanted to be an editor first, and I wanted to be a writer. And then eventually I realized that I was actually not bad at directing. So and I won awards in the school. Like, I was always the best director, best film, and so I was, so that's kind of like what propelled me to be a filmmaker. The idea, when I saw myself in a class with other filmmakers, and I saw that I liked it and I was good at it.
So you kind of stumbled into it, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So knowing that, would you say there were movies or films that influenced you, or that currently influence you, or would you say more kind of the experience of discovering filmmaking was how it kind of landed in your life?
For me, it was both, and I think a lot of people now get the feeling that I had at the time, where when you start doing your, making movies or taking pictures, like now everybody takes pictures with Instagram and everything like this with your phone, suddenly you start appreciating photography more. Mm-hmm. When you start making movies, start appreciating filmmaking more.
Yeah,
you're harder on the films that you go watch, and you realize also the achievement that it is to make the film, or like to make it look good and everything like this, because you've tried to do it yourself and you know how hard it is to do it yourself. Yeah, like it's I think like the one film that I watched that would like switched me into it was when I watched Three Colors Blue by Kieslowski. To me, that film was like, wow, because it was like a painting pretty much. For me, it was like coming from a very visual painting medium. The guy was painting and literally everything blue and everything. He was so bold in his style and his storytelling, and it was so character driven and was so internal, like what you were saying before about Gus. It was such an internal, Juliette Binoche in that role is such an internal thing. And you see it through her eyes, and it's very silent and it's very still. And I was like, wow, that was to me like mesmerizing.
Wow, very cool. Do you have like a favorite director now that you're a working director yourself, or someone that you kind of look to as a mentor, or?
Yeah, I mean, it switches from age, from year to year, or
right.
some not from year to year, but when I was in school, it was Kieslowski, Bergman. Those two were my main. Antonioni was another one that was like a really big influence for me. Kurosawa, Then when I got out of school, I started Michael Haneke became a huge influence. Those like those films that you watch and you take with you, like it felt. I love popcorn movies, so to speak, like the genre. I love to superhero movies. I love everything, but not everything. But I like a variety. I'm not like, I only like this films or the other. But those are the films that resonated with me at the most, and the films that I want to make as well.
So I know you don't necessarily identify specifically with a specific country or upbringing, but recently, especially, there's been a huge surgence of amazing Latin American films. I think of, Cuarón and Inarritu and Del Toro. Can you point to any specific reason why there seems to be this renaissance of Latin American filmmaking? Is there anything that you could identify, or it seems like an interesting trend to me. I don't know.
I don't know if there's a reason for it other than these people are just very, very talented,
right.
And and it was a combination of people that are very, very talented and that were given the opportunity. Funny enough, yesterday or the day before, I watched A Little Princess by Cuarón, who was like the one of the first films that he did, and I was mesmerized at how good it was. Like Lubeski did it. I mean, now they're you see and they were just talented people. They're extremely, extremely talented filmmakers.
Yeah.
And you can tell the grammar of the film is incredible. The way that everything is, he has an obsession with green, and everything is green in his movies. I mean, they're just masters.
I will say Birdman was, in the last 3 years, to me, one of the best movies I've seen. I know it was kind of a divisive movie, but I sort of just, my jaw was on the floor the whole time because it was so weird, but like so good and rang so true. So that's interesting to hear your perspective on that. Do you have any dream actors or actresses you'd like to work with down the road? I mean, your cast in this movie was pretty good, but
Yeah. It's interesting because you have to decide at one point where if you want to work with actors that are going to bring you the marquee value that will enable you to raise the money to make a film that is more robust, that will have a platform that will get to more screens, and the message that you want to convey to the world will get to more people that way because of that, or to choose a path of maybe not the well-known actor, but the really, really committed actor, the really well-committed artist. And so, I mean, I love Fassbender. I love, there's many people that I love, that I would love to work with. But I also am always open to the new talent, the talent that has not been yet recognized, but there's something there. And it's all about the casting. Like sometimes it's not, you can put the dream cast in your head and like, oh, this is going to be played by this and this and this and this. But I find it more, it's almost like when I'm writing also, like I like to just look at, that's why I also like to be in acting classes a lot, because then I can see there's so much talent out there, so much talent. And it's just like it's just placing these people in the right roles in your head. Dream cast, I mean, Fassbender for me is like, right now it's like,
oh, yeah.
I love to watch him.
Steve Jobs was another one of my favorites. I mean, I love Sorkin, so I feel like that movie, and Danny Boyle, so I feel like that movie was a combination of a lot of amazing elements, but that was another kind of jaw-dropping performance for me. Fassbender is definitely killing it right now. So a lot of people who tune into this network and these kinds of shows are young filmmakers. Do you have any advice for young filmmakers who are maybe just starting film school or not starting film school? What would you say to them right now, as someone who's a little more experienced?
Sure. To me, it's really like practice. It's all about just getting your feet dirty, your feet wet. Sorry, I guess dirty too. Yeah. Your hands dirty, your feet wet. When you are a painter, for instance, going back to the analogy of the painting, you discover that you're much better and you become much better as a painter, as an artist, if you're painting 3 or 4 paintings at the same time than if you're just focusing on a painting at a time, right? So my advice is always to work on several projects at the same time, because if you get stuck in one, you'll go to the next one, and you will learn something in the next one that you can apply to the previous one. It's always about like just keeping the flow of energy, of like creative energy, always outputting. Don't wait until the studio signs you a check. You just go out there and do it. Now more than ever, you can do it with a phone. I mean, literally, I was there. I was ready to do it with a DSLR and like nothing. My goal was to get actors from the acting studio, from Susan Batson's studio, go out and shoot. So I had a pool of great actors, and I had a camera, and that was it. And anybody can do that as well. As the only thing you need is a good story, a good script. That's the most important thing. But also, to find, as a filmmaker, you have to find your voice, and that only comes with tons and tons of practice.
Nice. Well, I do think there's truth to the fact that it seems like in this industry, especially, once you start a passion project, it seems to grow, which I think is what happened with this movie. You hit the streets with the DSLR, and then all of a sudden you have Red, you have an AD, you have a great cinematographer, you've got this amazing cast, and it seems like if you're willing to light the fire under a great idea, other people will come join you around that fire.
Yeah, it's very true. So it's very important to not wait for anybody to give you permission. It's like the reason that everybody got on the bandwagon with me is because I was gonna do the movie no matter what.
Right.
And it wasn't like people kind of. It seemed interesting because everybody's fears come in, and in the beginning it was like, are you really gonna do this film with like no budget? I'm like, yeah. but you can't. Or there's always like this, like, but you can't do. How are you gonna do it? I'm like, don't worry. Like, if you don't, get out of the way, kind of thing. If you don't, like, there's a saying, I can't remember right now, but like, if you don't want to contribute, get out of. At least don't get in the way. And then they realize, like, because they also are afraid, and they also want to do what you're doing. So they jump in, and then they jump in the bandwagon. But it has to start with the passion to make the project.
Very cool. Love that advice. So wonderful movie. I loved it. I really enjoyed the movie. How about what's next for you? What can we look out for? What's upcoming?
So we just in June this year we shot another feature film. I didn't direct this one. My friend Ronnie Khalil did. He wrote a very wonderful script called "With a Kiss I Die," starring Ella Kweku, and I'm not a DP per se. Like I DP for friends if they ask me. I'm a photographer as well. I do a lot of advertising as a photographer, and I know how to shoot and everything. I'm a painter's background, so I know how to light and everything like that. But I'm not constantly in the DP work of, like, I don't know the equipment. Like, the equipment gets updated like every 6 months, But that's one movie that is coming out that we shot, and we shot in Greece. Beautiful sceneries, beautiful. It looks amazing. I went in it with the Terrence Malick approach of, like, we shot everything at sunrise and sunset.
Wow.
So if you can imagine shooting in the Greek islands with, before sunrise, a little bit after sunrise, and same thing, and dusk. The movie looks, it's beautiful. I mean, I put every ounce of, and there was no budget for this. Like, so everything was shot with available light.
Wow.
And so I was reading about The Revenant and watching The Revenant and looking at their American cinematography, like how they did it and everything. Like, of course, they had snow everywhere, so the bounce is nice.
Oh yeah.
Right, but so it was pretty much like a couple of LEDs and a bounce board that we used for the whole film.
Well, it sounds like a beautiful movie. I can't wait to see it. That was called
With a Kiss I Die.
With a Kiss I Die. And any idea of when we can expect that? I'm sure you guys are in post for a while. But...
Yeah, I mean, the rough cut was literally like just finished a couple of days ago.
Great.
So I'm thinking that it's going to go into the festival route in early 2017 or next summer, pretty much.
Okay, awesome. Well, looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Anything else upcoming? Or obviously, I'm sure your hands are full with that. But
no, well, luckily that's the one thing I like. I like when people ask me to DP or to do something else. Is like when you're a director, like it's such a heavy thing on your shoulders to push the film from the conception to pre-production to post and then to promote the film. And when you're a DP, just go in, shoot, and then get out, right?
Yeah.
So there's not really much stress on me except like let's make sure that the color grade is good.
Yeah. And
let's make sure that of course I'm in my best interest to give feedback to the editors and like give my take, but it's not at the end of the day, it's not my responsibility. I mean, I give all my creative collaborations to the director, and then he decides whether or not to take it, and that's it. Yeah, I kind of lost you. No,
totally fine. That's great. Even great advice to be involved in any way that you can when it comes to filmmaking. Even if it's, we need a first AD for a week, can you come on and help? I feel like anytime you have the opportunity to join a great project, you should not hesitate to do it, because I've found even the projects I've worked on, there's so much to be learned from every single one. Well, thank you. I want to thank you so much for coming in today. Again, guys, the movie that we're promoting right now is called I Was There. Wonderful, wonderful movie. Premiering at the DTLA Film Festival soon. Keep your eyes peeled for dates. I could not recommend the movie more highly. In the meantime, my name is Jeff Graham. You guys can find me on Twitter at Jeffrey C. Graham. Of course, this is a production of the Popcorn Talk. We're talking movies like this all the time with amazing filmmakers. We're reviewing movies every Friday on a show called Anatomy of a Movie. It's an in-depth review show for everything in theaters right now. You can find it as a podcast or online. Jorge, before we go, where can they find you one more time?
They can find me on my Instagram, Jorge Valdes-Iga. It's Jorge Valdes-Iga, Valdesiga.
Great. And then again, you guys can find me at Jeffrey C. Graham or, of course, this network at the Popcorn Talk. Thank you so much again today, guys. We'll see you next time.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals. From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network. The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.